And hello again, I'm Joe Spina, and this is Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, reality our realm, set as we see it, and frankly as well. We have a jam-packed show tonight. Paulie's back from sabbatical. Good to have you back, Paul.
Good to be back, Joe.
Very special guest, Lisa Wallace. Nice having you here, Lisa.
Hi, thank
one
you.
voice, one community, one voice.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about that.
I started One Community, One Voice about 5 years ago when I moved to Ward 6. I bought my first home with my husband, like a first-time buyer home, and the neighborhood wasn't that together. So there were things like I thought just should be taken care of that I don't want to blame the city because a lot of it is the residents can do on their own. So I'm not like one of those people that go, oh, the city should be doing this, the city should be doing that, because I believe that residents can do a lot on their own. So
you're an activist, basically, right? Community activist?
I'm a mom, I guess.
I like that definition.
I'm a mom.
A mom that cares.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I have to raise my kids here, so I have to make sure that
Five kids you have, huh?
Yep, 3 are they're older, and they're in Boston from my husband's first marriage. And then me and my husband have one son who's 10. He goes to the shoemaker. And then we adopted another one who graduated from North Shore Community College. His name is Drew. 10-year-old's Jaden. And he works at Bridgewell. And he's going to be an electrician. So, yeah. Now,
Paul, you were mentioning this to me. You were familiar with the position that Lisa took on medical marijuana, was it?
Yes, during the deliberations about whether we should have medical marijuana and where it might be located, you know, setting the zones where it would be located. I just recall there weren't too many people in opposition.
But Lisa was.
Yep. And,
yeah.
and as she correctly points out, it wasn't about not wanting medical marijuana. It was the location and proximity to schools or what have you.
Well,
right?
give your take on it.
Well, my whole neighborhood in Ward 6 was against it, where we were. But it wasn't because of the issue, because it's already been voted, so we can't change that. The state said you have to have it. What I didn't like is that it just seems like it always goes in Ward 6. Whenever there's something that is possibly, you know, related to something that, like drugs or this or that, it's always in Ward 6. Yeah.
And but that's a commercial ward, though, isn't it, basically? I mean, it's heavily commercial.
There's spots everywhere. But
there is true, though, that Ward 6 has the GE, it has the Linway, it has Bennett Street and Western Ave, and all the commercial sections of this, not all of them, but
the majority.
Predominant. I mean, then you have, you know, the sections like in and around Oakville Street and that area, which is right next to commercial areas. But you also have areas of Pine Hill and so forth that are also part of Ward 6.
Well, we have a jam-packed show. We're going to get right to Frankly Joe. You can step in, opine anytime you want there, Lisa.
Okay.
Frankly Joe, once upon a time, taking a knee or kneeling signaled respect and reverence. Today it's an act of disrespect and defiance guised as protest. When Tebow took a knee, the left went bonkers. They vilified and ridiculed him and ultimately drove him out of the NFL. Yet when Kaepernick took a knee, the left applauded. Respect gave way to disrespect and reverence to defiance. Sadly, taking a knee has evolved into a racial thing. But taking a knee is not about race. It's about respect. It's about honor. It's about acknowledging American exceptionalism. It's about appreciation. It's about a Sicilian immigrant, like my father, given the opportunity to better himself. It's about making an inner city kid's dream come true. It's about allowing my children and my grandchildren to marry whomever they love. It's about opportunity for all. And for that, I will always take a knee.
Well, that's rather profound statements there, Joe. And I have to tell you, I hadn't thought about that, but the notion that Kaepernick taking a knee was, you know, fine. If you want to take the position that Kaepernick taking a knee was somehow an important position to take, you have to, and you can't deny Tebow's effort to do the same thing for a different reason.
But one was vilified and the other was applauded.
That's my point.
That's the hypocrisy of it all.
Right.
Times are
That's the,
Huh?
Times are different when he did it to compare to now.
But he's going to be talking about a whisper, Paul. That's a Frankly Paul time, yeah.
Do you want to do that? We
Oh,
do that now?
absolutely, because I think this is a paramount subject, and I think it's very important
Right.
to Lynn
And by
and
the
the
way,
nation.
while everybody's talking about taking a knee, this is something that is really important.
Very important,
This
very
other stuff, it's all superficial, if you ask me. But okay, so the poison pill. Why the whisper? There's an opioid epidemic sweeping the nation, and Lynn is not immune. More than 2 million Americans are either dependent on or abuse opioids. Here are some facts. In 2015, 52,404 overdose deaths in U.S., or 91 per day. In 2016, 236 million opioid prescriptions were filled. Imagine that. There's only 325 million people.
Take a look at some of these other numbers.
In 2014, 7.8 billion Vicodin pills and 4.9 billion Percocet tablets were distributed nationwide. Billions. So it's called 8 and 5, 13 billion opioid pills. Okay. In 2015, Americans accounted for 99.7% of the world's hydrocodone consumption, which I think this fits all into that category. And finally, fentanyl, a fully synthetic opioid, is up to 100 times more powerful than morphine and the main culprit in the rise of opioid deaths. So we're whispering about this, we're talking about it very in hushed tones while we're screaming about taking knees. I think we should be screaming about this.
Yeah, it's a big subject. I don't really know. I'm not overly familiar. I know that at one time when I fell off the roof, I had my pick of the litter. You know, whether it was Demerol, codeine, this and that.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't understand the effects back then. This was many, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Today it's epidemic, and I guess in Lynn we have a lot of ODs.
Yep. I'm a recovering heroin addict.
Do you know anything about this subject?
Oh, yeah.
Would you?
I was a heroin addict for years.
You're kidding.
I was a prostitute, a heroin
Can I
addict.
ask you something? And that's wonderful. So you were able to...
It's so wonderful.
No, I'm talking about you were able to kick the habit.
Yeah. Well, I'm always going to be an addict. Always. I'm always mindful of what I have.
Talk to him. Tell her. Tell her your association.
I'm a recovering alcoholic, 26 years. Yeah.
And I admire both of you.
Yeah. We have the same disease.
I'm
Our
a gambler.
choice of...
One's too many, 1,000's not enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I was talking to an older woman who spent a life educating herself in different areas. Her specialty is how does the individual work within the context of the group, of the society. You know, it's like a reverse thing. Very interesting lady. She mentioned to me, and I don't know if there's any truth to it, I'm throwing it to you because I don't know. She said heroin itself does not do a great deal of damage to the body.
It doesn't.
So she's correct on that. It's when it's mixed with sugar or some other thing that it can have some serious effects. Is that accurate?
No. Well, yes. If you mix heroin, they cut it with things,
Right.
additives. But heroin itself, it's a very strong drug. And what happens is, so say the person's used to taking a certain amount so that they can either get high or just not get sick. They have what's called an intolerance in their body, even though they had taken this much the day before.
Yeah.
It's like their body resets, and they could take the same exact thing the next day, but they overdose.
Really?
Yeah, it's called a tolerance decrease or something.
That's the danger of it then.
Yeah, it's a very strong drug, and you know your body is somewhat it can adjust itself.
It regulates and so forth. And the other part of it is that every dose of heroin that you get is potentially concocted by somebody different, so the additives can be different. They can be greater or less.
Yep.
And so the heroin can have all kinds of different kind of
But
effects.
drug addiction is ecumenical, right? I mean, it doesn't care what your gender, doesn't care your age, doesn't care your race, doesn't care anything. All it does is everybody's susceptible.
Yep.
Is that an accurate statement?
Yep. Everybody has, I believe, the disease of
But
addiction.
heroin is not synthetic. It comes from nature, from poppy seeds. The new one that's out, the one that you mentioned, Paul,
Fentanyl.
at the end,
Fentanyl.
they tell me that is brutal.
I've been on fentanyl before. It's
And?
not new. They had made it in patches when I was.
You can wear it on a
Yeah.
patch, or you
That
can
was to get rid
inject
of
it, right?
smoking, right? Was that what it was?
No, it's for
I don't
pain.
think you can smoke it.
Yeah,
I'm not
no.
sure.
Oh, you can smoke heroin.
You can?
Oh, yeah.
Hell, heroin you can smoke.
Yeah.
Heroin you can do any which way to Sunday. Now, is there any truth, because I talked to Joe about this, Joe Crit last week, and by the way, folks, thanks for writing in about Joe. He did a nice job. I call him Joe the Wit Corrit. What do you think? Does it make?
Oh, okay.
But he was
So
in
am I going to
town.
lose my role to Joe? Joe, you're not taking over, are you?
No, he isn't. Can't
I
because
hope not, Joe.
well, he's our boss. He's the vice president of the board.
Right.
Yeah, he had to fill your shoes, Paul. It was not easy. Now, the thing that he pointed out, because he was a captain in the fire department, and all the public safety guys are out there with, is it called
Narcan.
And what he pointed out was sometimes they rely on that they're going to be pulled out. He said, but dead is dead. That was really kind of profound. You can't do a thing to anybody if they're dead.
True.
It only works if you're still breathing.
Right.
And people should understand that.
Right.
But you
Narcan
can't-
is it's a wonderful thing if the cards line up right.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody has
true?
to have it. They have to have it while you're still breathing.
And they
as
have
you
to have
point
enough
out.
of it.
Really?
Yeah, sometimes it takes.
So how long? I hope you don't think I'm being personal. How long have
please
you
ask me
been?
anything.
How long have you been?
Clean.
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 Yeah, clean. That's a
okay.
great word.
Clean.
How long have you been without need?
Probably now going on 13 years. I've lost count because I have.
That's a good way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally.
Just for today.
Yeah, it doesn't affect me every day. I don't get triggered by things every day, but I've changed my life so much that drugs are not.
You got a great twinkle in your eye. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, my husband had a lot to do with it.
By the way, I'm clean over 3 years now.
From
No.
gambling?
Cigarettes.
Oh, that's
no,
good.
Forget it. I'm going to go get scratch tickets right after the show.
Wow, okay.
No, I took up food, folks, as you can see.
Me too.
And I took up other things. But I gave up smoking, and the irony of it all is I've never looked back. I have no desire to smoke again, and that's addictive too. In fact, friends of mine who, Paulie, are both alcoholics and former smokers, said that giving up the butts was tougher than the booze.
Well, when I gave up smoking cigars.
That's right, you
I
did.
mean, and I needed to have pneumonia and not be so sick in bed for 10 days
Yeah.
that I could get it all out
That's
of my
how
system.
I quit. That's exactly how I quit smoking.
Seriously?
Yep. I got so sick, I got a respiratory infection, and I was sick for like 2 months, and I couldn't even breathe, never mind, puff a cigarette or anything. I used to smoke Newport 100s.
So you get it out of your system,
Yeah.
and then
You
it's
went
a
through
lot
everything.
easier.
I was already coughing, so whatever, if I quit smoking, whatever I was going to cough was going to come out.
Is there anything, before we move on, is there anything that either one of you can talk about that may be helpful in our elected officials may be talking about if they want our vote? So both of
Towards
you, I'd
this?
like to express your views
On the matter of opioids.
On the matter of opioids?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is
yeah,
there anything?
We're doing it all wrong. We're doing
Tell
it
'em.
all wrong. We're doing it all wrong.
What should we be doing?
Drugs are always going to be here. We are never, ever going to get rid of drugs.
I
whether
buy
it's
that.
Coke, addiction is the problem. It is not what we're using. You have scratch tickets. I was 300 pounds too, so I had a food addiction. I lost weight by having the surgery. But addiction is the problem, and unless we start addressing that aspect of it and start treating that, you can't have an addict using heroin if they're not addicted. So why are we trying to limit the number of opioids? Why are we trying to do this, and why aren't we going into the schools and teaching the kids before they wake up that monster, before that peer pressure time when they say,
Yeah.
here's your first drink of alcohol, here's your first hit of weed, here's Coke, here's pills, whatever it is. Why are we not educating our kids on, listen, this is what can happen? Scare the crap out of them like I do mine. I scare my kids so much that they are shocked when they see people smoke a cigarette.
You know, Lisa, I went to the Science Museum with the school, and they love to show you a lung of a smoker. Well, you know what happened after that.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't put a cigarette in my mouth if you want, under any condition, until the memory faded.
Right.
Yeah.
And I picked the cigarette up again. So what you're saying, not only do you have to scare them, it's got to be persistent and constant.
Yep.
You buy that, Paul?
I do. So it's about frequency and intensity, as far as I'm concerned.
That's
In terms of how you would address this thing, for example, what we do at GLIS is we're providing levels of support for people who have behavioral health issues, of one form or another, and that doesn't necessarily mean substance use issues, but it can be, and in a lot of cases it is.
It contributes.
So the idea is, giving the individual, empowering them to be able to make better decisions, and helping them to achieve the results of those decisions and get comfortable with the positive outcomes. That's the kind of thing. So, for example, the frequency. So somebody you used the word trigger before. That's that's big in the addiction world. It's what triggers you to do these things. If you're trying to stop and you go through it doesn't have to be a bad event, it can be a good event. Anything can happen that can trigger you to say, well, you know what, I'm going to use again.
I remember that. It's a familiar.
So what we try to do is, we can't stop you from taking that first drink or that first drug, but what we can do is we can encourage you to not take it, remind you of what life can be like when you're not and how good it can be. Following things like the 12 steps and, saying that for this moment I am not going to pick up, for this day, for this minute, for this second. Whatever it takes, you do it, I remember when I you were talking about how it's harder to quit cigarettes than it is drinking. I quit cigarettes 2 months after I quit drinking. I wouldn't have been able to do the cigarettes if I hadn't done the drinking, right? Yep. But when I was quitting smoking, I was deploying the tools that I learned in AA. So what I would do is I would have a cigarette in my mouth and have the matches, and I would say, or the lighter, and I would say, you know what, if I didn't have the matches and the lighter, then I wouldn't be able to do it. So all I need to do is just get rid of just have the willpower to get rid of those matches, that 1 second, get rid of them. I would get rid of them and drop them in the water or something. So now I can't, even if I wanted to, I can't, now I have to go find the matches again. And you just buy a little time.
I get you.
A little time and a little,
You fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
I want to read something that a viewer sent in to both of you for comment, okay? And then we have to move on. By the way, Lisa, I'd love to have you back, and Paul, and we'll just do a complete show on narcotics.
Oh, I would love that.
Would you like to?
I would love that.
Promise?
Okay, so we're going to move on to another topic.
That'd be a great show. And then we can tell elected officials and policymakers what they ought to be doing as opposed to what they're doing.
Hey, can I interrupt for one more second? Because
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate what Lisa was saying. And the fact of the matter is that while I wouldn't say that there's no emphasis on trying to do those things that you pointed out, I think the elected officials always want to try to do that thing that gets them the headline, as opposed to doing the stuff that needs to be done. More resources need to be committed to the prevention component of it.
Yes.
Not, instead of spending money putting people in jail, spend money putting them in treatment programs.
Right.
That's what needs to be done.
Well, that won't happen if we have really good programs. Like she talked about dealing addiction.
Yeah, we have programs here in Lynn. Lynn saved me. If it wasn't for the programs that we have here, I would have never been where I am.
Oh, I'd like to hear that. I like hearing that. So there was good programs out there that can do it.
There's great programs here in
Can you
Lynn.
name one?
Yeah,
So folks,
Bay
Project
Ridge Hospital, Straight Ahead Ministries, Project Cope, North Shore Community College saved my butt.
seriously.
When I went to I went to rehab at Melrose Wakefield in their psych unit. I was there for 14 days, and then they kept saying something about aftercare, and I just wanted to get home because I knew I had dope at my house. I OD'd, and they stuck, I guess I tried to kill people while I was coming out of it, I don't know. But they sanctioned me in the hospital for 14 days. I was a mess. Like, what you see now is not what I was. I was a prostitute, a gangbanger. I hung in Mission Hill, not the good Mission Hill now, where all the college kids are. the bricks, the old Mission Hill in Roxbury. That's where I was. So Lynn is not what they say it is. I know what a real city is.
Right.
Are you saying Lynn is?
Lynn is good. Lynn
A
is
lot
not
better
as
than people
bad.
give it credit for?
Yeah, yeah.
The issue isn't that there aren't programs out there. It's just not enough.
They're not enough. But I went from there, I went to Bay Ridge. And from Bay Ridge, I met an unbelievable staff. They did a dual diagnosis program because addiction's mental and physical.
Yes.
And then they helped me to get into college, me, of all people. And I made Phi Theta Kappa. And I studied drugs and alcohol rehabilitation with Howie Silvesky. And I went into East Boston, and I interned at the drug court there. I had a really good role model.
Now,
for
it's
everything.
really nice to hear that story, Lisa. And I hope folks out there can relay that to others that may feel lost, right,
Oh,
and
so
afloat.
true.
This is a description. It says, Joe, you nailed it. That's me. I happen to say the horse is out of the barn by the time they have to go to rehabilitation. It may be too late. I didn't mean it that way. I just meant I wish we could prevent it, the thing you were talking about. He said the zombies, that's his words, not mine. The zombies come out at night and haunt the open all-night establishments looking for money, drugs, and a place to use them. I frequent gas stations and gym on Boston Street, and it's non-stop horror show. Wasted humanity, the LPD are overwhelmed with the size of the scourge. Government, in big letters, politicians, have to step up to the plate and make the sale and distribution of these narcotics an act of terror, a crime against humanity. You're saying that we should never get to that it should always be addressing the addiction problems. After the fact is...
That's the most awful statement I've ever heard. Oh, my God.
Well,
the crime against humanity is the fact that we're not addressing that there is a disease that is making our people do that. Not the fact that they're out there doing it. Like, they're not zombies. Never, ever did... I'm from Saugus. I have the typical... My parents were middle class. We grew up in a nice home. I didn't have all the things that they claim. I'm an addict. I'm not a zombie. This is what happens when you get clean. And I was like this before. There's a disease inside you that wakes up. I don't like it when people call them junkies.
That's okay.
That's
So
awful.
That's why you respond to it.
So, and I would add something to that. And while I am not of the belief that 100% of our effort needs to be on the programmatic stuff, because that's a huge part of it, it really is. But doing things like discouraging the distribution is good. And I've said before that anybody who sells heroin, and maybe you have to include it with fentanyl, I mean, why not charge anybody who does that with attempted murder? Because in effect, you know what I mean, those kinds of things. And if you can upgrade that, you can maybe discourage people from participating in the distribution part of it, which will help a little bit.
Let me defend the viewer on this basis. That's a perception that he has. Whether it's right or wrong, and whether you like it or not, that's a perception that's out there. That has to be dealt with also. That's all I'm saying. Now, this is a decent gentleman who may be entirely wrong. You know, he sees it from a different perspective than you.
Well, can I
you
just
have to look at that.
As a recovering alcoholic,
Yep.
I can say this, and I consider myself a drunk. I don't hold anything back on that. But here's the thing: the impact of the drug addict, it isn't just what they do to themselves; it's what they do to everybody around them. That makes it very easy for somebody to take that position.
That's right.
And you know, so it's not enough to just say you can't take that position. If you have a child that's addicted to drugs, and on a regular basis they rob you, they go in supermarkets and steal food to sell on the street, whatever they do, anything that they're doing, if they do it with any kind of, there are they're victims of their efforts to get high, right? And
she
that's
mentioned
part
the disease,
of the problem.
victims of a disease. Is
Yeah.
that what the term?
It's almost like I have a child that is possibly, I mean, he's not severe, but he may have oppositional defiance disorder. So he was on the spectrum when he was little, and he would I couldn't take him out in certain public areas. Sounds would trigger him. He'd have fits, things like that. Like, so is that the same? Like, are we going to blame him for the things that he's doing to our family? No, my son had a condition. Trust me, it wasn't easy for me. I cried. You know, he would come at me. He would hurt himself. You know, that's almost, I know the effects are different when it's an addict and they're stealing from you or whatever, but it still hurts.
Of course.
If we're going to say, well, yeah, the effects that an addict has on their family, well, you know, there are people that have mental illness, there are people that have this. Do we blame them? Do we say, oh, well, the things that you have is affecting us in this way, and, you know, just stop it?
Right,
You know?
and I would just want to make sure that I'm clear on this, as I'm not blaming the addict. What I'm saying is that because there are victims associated with their behavior, that it's not unexpected that some people are going to take that position.
Yeah, I'm simply saying that that perception, that reality is that person's reality, and there is a view of that nature that should be talked about.
And one of the things that people are trying to do today is they're trying to reduce the stigma associated with drug addiction, so that, you know, so that people can say, you know, things that Lisa are saying, you know, it's because of the addiction is something that, you know, we all have, and it's latent in most people, but it's the people who are active addicts. It is a real problem, and what we need to do is focus on the problem, try to solve it, and not hold it out as a moral issue for the individual.
Well, we'll get into it deep, and you know, we have to move on. That's why I'd love to do a show on this with both of you, but we have to take a trip around Lynn. We're going to spin. You like that one?
Spin around
Spin
Lynn?
around Lynn. Apparently, the Thurgood Marshall Middle School that I taught at for many years, once known as Eastern Junior High School.
Eastern Junior High School, huh?
Yeah. Which, by the way, I did math on this, Paul. I figured out that it's about 4 acres. That 172,500 square feet is roughly 4 acres. Because they divided 443,400 into whatever.
Right.
So that's how large it is, and apparently they've decided that they're going to make mixed housing there, or they're trying to do, and they got some type of waivers. I believe Sear and Buzzy Barton were instrumental in that, right?
Right. That would make sense because it's in Sears Ward, and Buzzy lives on across the street. Yeah.
But converting it to senior market rate housing, they're going to leave a set aside of 10% for subsidized, with basically 1 bedroom, some townhouses and 2 bedroom. Supposedly, the property land is assessed at $1 million, and the building itself at $8 million. So the developer comes in there, and
Who's going to be the developer?
let's assume it's a $10 million project, right?
Do we know who the?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
So there's a percentage of fair market housing, is that what you're saying?
It's supposed to be a private enterprise coming in. They had to do what they call a request. Do you know what this is called?
An RFP.
Yeah.
Request for proposal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they did that.
Right.
And off the top, I mean, I don't have details, neither do you. Good idea, bad idea?
Good idea.
You like the idea?
We need to have a percentage of fair market housing in the city, and we
These
have
are
to.
senior citizens at market rate, 1,000 to 1,600.
Well, that's different. So is it, what are we talking about? Fair market housing or market housing? Because there's two different terms, because we're trying to change, you know,
You're
like
very
when we
quick,
say,
you know that, don't you?
Hey, come on now, I'm a mom.
Right.
So my kids lie. So fair market rate is the new term that we're using for subsidized housing, because when you say subsidized housing, people think Section 8 welfare, but that's really not what it is. Subsidized fair market rate means affordable rent for all.
Right.
So that, I'm not saying you're going to pay or get a voucher, but you're not going to be paying $2,200 for a 1-bedroom.
Gotcha.
And look, I drove down the Linway right by Beacon, the Beacon site today, and there were people pitching tents.
Yeah,
With
Lynn
their
United.
Lynn United talking about affordable housing.
Yes, I was there at the
There's
rally.
you know, there's a group of people that say we don't have enough affordable housing, and I tend to agree with.
30% of our housing stock is affordable housing.
Right.
Say you in.
And
That's
it's
an
not
overload, Paul.
Right, but there's still not enough.
Wait a minute, affordable by what? What are you saying?
Subsidized housing.
Right, we're not talking about subsidized, we're talking about fair market, and that's the
Well,
misconception.
you have to explain that distinction. We got a pretty sharp cookie here. Joe Corritt said something profound. The wit. Joe Corritt,
The
wit.
wit.
Yeah.
I'm going to remember that.
He said, build them and they'll come. And he's saying if you keep building, I'm not going to say fair market or getting that thing, but if you build housing that attracts subsidized housing,
You will get more of it. Yep.
you're going to
Right.
devalue the total value of the city because there's not enough revenue coming in.
He's right.
Everybody agree with that?
I
Yep.
agree with that,
Okay.
yes.
And there's not enough housing stock in the
Right.
state of Massachusetts to handle all of the, it's like the job market is the same as the housing market in this sense. So the job market is there aren't enough people making a quote living wage, and there aren't enough houses that people can afford to purchase or,
Gotcha.
or rent
All
and
right,
so
so
forth.
net bottom line, because we're going to keep going, is both of you on the surface would say this is a good idea.
I don't.
I'm going to say it's a good idea for the
If.
developers to come in with a percentage for fair market housing.
And you are opposed to it for?
I want to know better understanding of it. What I would say is I don't think we need more affordable housing. I think more of the communities that surround Lynn need to participate in the affordable market
If
world.
this is not affordable housing, I think they're trying to sell this as that little place that
Luxury.
you're talking about.
I can tell you, without
Luxury
knowing
rent?
any of the details, and I haven't read any of the stories
it's
on this,
gonna be-
this is going to be affordable.
All right. How
Which is
about?
different.
Okay.
It's affordable at different levels. It could be the original definition of affordable, plus that like kind of mid-tier affordable, and it will be some market rate.
Yes.
It'll be all of the above.
That's a good thing.
So this has got a little snake oil in it.
Yeah,
Potential for snake oil.
yeah. If we keep having luxury apartments come in at unbelievable rents, we're going to displace a lot
When
of
you got
people.
clean, you also got very bright. You understand that, don't you?
So-
That one raise that
So,
on it's a rock
so
star.
can I ask you, so on the Beacon site, they're going to put 350 market rate units there. Do you find that to be a bad idea?
Awful.
Awful.
And they want to gate it. Is this the one that they're rallying against?
Well, that's the site where they're going to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good idea or a bad idea?
No, that's awful. There's no, they're like $2,200 a month for a one bedroom or something.
What's wrong with that?
So that's going to.
If people come to this, some people come from outside the city
And then what
and will pay the
happens?
rent,
Right.
and they'll spend money.
But there's going to be a whole bunch of folks getting vouchers that's going to drop, even though it's 2,200.
No, there's no vouchers. There's no money for vouchers. We're not going to get
Well,
any more
who's going
vouchers.
to
You know, the
pay
list is like
2,200?
the people that are coming, the richer people that come from Boston, Salem, like all of
Will
those.
come there for
They'll come.
2,200?
Absolutely, they'll
And
come
why is
here.
it a bad idea then?
Because what happens is you raise the value of the rest of, it kind of like sets the standard. So then the places that are not luxury, they raise their rents. So people, families, we have large families in Lynn.
Okay.
You know, and if a person that's got 5 kids, I can't afford to rent an apartment for $2,200. My mortgage isn't even that much.
But there is a difference between, having an ocean view that sees the Boston skyline
it'll
versus
raise-
living on
Absolutely.
Chase
that
Street.
But
ocean
it'll
view
raise the
is not the
bar.
most attractive ocean view in the world. It's a harbor. You know,
So what?
But it'll raise the bar. Then, once you see, oh, come to Lynn, because more money's coming in, then you're gonna have the 3-decker ones that are not as nice, and they're gonna raise their rent.
So I have to respectfully disagree because only because I believe that there needs to be, push and pull market forces going
That's
on
another
here.
show. We gotta move on.
So let me, but I'm
Okay.
going to finish this.
okay.
So, subsidies, good. Yep, we need to have them. I mean, I run a nonprofit, and we do a lot for people who are in need, and we do it every day, and we continue to do it, and we want to do it, and so forth. But somebody's got to pay for what's going on. So that's why you need market rate stuff, and you need businesses in the
I
community.
don't have a problem with that, Paul.
And
I
if you-
have to-
300 though, out of 300, and how many are going in?
48 or something like that.
20% of them can't be fair market? So out of all of those, we can't have 20%? That's gonna kill us?
But we're already at 30% in the city,
But
right?
that's for
30%.
vouchers. I'm not talking about vouchers. I'm talking about just normal rents, so that like.
So
you're
who's
not
going to
getting
pay the gap between the 2,200 and the rate that the fair market would?
People like me.
No,
I'm
no.
not- I
So,
can't get
okay, so you're
vouchers.
saying that you're going to put a cap on how much the landlord can charge? Or are you going to say that
20% of whatever fair market rate is. I think Kingsland somewhat, I used to live in Kingsland, and they did it. They had market rate, which was you paid whatever they charged for it. Then they had the Section 8, and then they had the medium income. I was medium.
Right.
So they based it off of whatever I made. It was like 30 or 40% of what I
Okay,
made.
so you paid 30 or 40% of your income or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But is that all the landlord got, or did they get a subsidy on top of that?
No, they got no subsidy.
Right.
But
So-
they also got a crap load of money from the people that were paying market rate. I mean, 20% out of 365.
This is interesting to listen to between the two of you, these positions. So, on one hand, you think that building 370, these apartments at whatever they are.
Right.
is
That's,
a net
350
positive, and
units
you say it's
is
a
not,
net negative.
yeah, I don't see 350 units as being enough to shift the balance of power between the haves and the have-nots.
Vehicles the replication
Right.
of the same thing?
And it will.
Then it does.
Yes, and it will. We're going to be developing our waterfront. We're going to, right now we have 500 abandoned, neglected homes that are not, they're just sitting there, they're abandoned. We have Elhan waiting to take them, turn them over, and do first-time buyers. So single families can come in and buy a home. We're not doing, there's a glitch in why we can't do it power-wise, but if we don't start bringing in affordable housing for families, where are we going to put them? If 20% of each development that comes in, 20% is like nothing. We already have 30 of subsidy, which that's Section 8 and all those vouchers, but just fair market housing, just so that you're not charging someone $2,200 to look at a crappy harbor. That's crazy on a one-bedroom. That's insane.
So market forces being what they are, you know, is it $2,200? I mean, what happens if...
Well, it could be more. There's
right,
market. They get to charge whatever they want.
And that's what it should be. The market
whatever they want.
market should determine the
But how are
price.
people going to live? Because if people
But
aren't making
everybody's
that,
coming in there, you know, I
So
have
how
a
are people
problem.
living now? Are people just dropping
But
dead because of
the market
this?
is really never
There's
allowed to
shelters.
operate, Paul. That's the problem. The problem is you have people who are always handicapping within the market. Politicians get in there, you got people with tents, and they're gonna say, wait a second, and they're gonna give in to them because they're gonna take a look at something, and it's a crazy game, Paul. They do not allow the market to work. That's the problem.
Right.
Now,
And Lynn does its fair share of supporting people in need. And
Lynn
my
does
only
more
point
than
is,
its fair
that's
share.
my point.
Yes, I agree with
So
you.
if we're going to do it, I want to start doing it in other communities.
No kidding.
That's
But
all
how
I'm
about
saying.
this one? How about Atlantic Standard Time? Did you ever hear this one?
Yeah, so this is the greatest thing ever, and I want to thank Dan Cahill for saving us an hour.
Yeah.
You know, so
Well, not yet.
Dan, you're doing great
You hear
work.
about this?
He's going to save us a whole hour.
They create a commission, and they're going to turn around and kiss Eastern Standard Time goodbye. For what reasons, I don't know. And they have a laundry list of all the wonderful benefits they're going to accrue from this. We're going to live longer. We're going to make more money. We're going to be happier. Paul, these guys are out of their minds.
The only thing that's going to happen, in my view, is like in a couple of weeks when we go to set, we won't have to set the clocks. What we said it,
probably
we
right, yeah.
I kind of look forward
What is
to
it?
it.
we
What is
fall
it taken
behind,
out? Yeah,
right?
so what are we taking out?
The
setting
fall
it
behind wouldn't happen.
I have no idea.
Oh.
And it can't happen unless all the New England states and New York do the same thing. Otherwise, we'll be all confused.
Right, we're under daylight savings times now, and what they were going to say is we're going to be under daylight savings time perpetually.
Yes,
That's
there
what
will
they
be
want.
no Eastern Standard
So
Time.
when I wake up in the morning and it's dark, which ones are going to be, light or dark?
Light, more likely light.
I like that better.
Yeah.
I hate waking up and it's dark.
Yeah. So
do.
you know,
I like
you know
it
what's really
better.
interesting?
What?
Being out in Arizona where the reservations are. I don't know if you were aware of this, but so if you're in Arizona, generally you're 3 hours time difference, on your West Coast time, but the reservations are only 2 hours difference. So I could be here and it's 3 o'clock, and I can be over there and it's 4 o'clock.
Paul.
Literally.
Paul, I lived in Michigan, and I was a sales manager for Johnson & Johnson, and Michigan was on a different time than Ohio. And when I'd have to go to Toledo, Ohio, from Detroit or Dearborn, I was completely confused because the hours were going back and forth like crazy.
And that is like
It's gonna happen here.
It's on steroids over at the reservations, because the
Of course.
reservation is in the same zone, but they just don't honor it in one section and they honor it in another.
Every time man gets involved in stuff, they create monsters. You understand that?
And have you ever heard that all of the hot spots in the world are right on the the meridians, the
On the
timeline.
hospital, on the meridians?
They're
Of
all
the
on
exact
timeline.
meridian?
Yeah.
The meridian is
Like
the
Israel,
is
it
the
runs
midpoint
right
of
through
15
Palestine and
degrees of
Israel.
longitude, yeah. We want to get a geography lesson, that's next week.
No, I'm a...
Anyway, quickly, I'm going to run through these because I have to get onto the stuff that I really love.
Okay.
Paul, we have spirited races in 1, 2, 3, and 5, arguably.
Yep.
Now, I don't know. O'Shea, you're in Ward 6.
No, I
Ward
moved, I
one?
moved to Ward Wonderful.
That's what I thought you said. I want to get back to that because you said Shoemaker School.
Yeah.
So you have O'Shea running against Losey. Losey beat him by a $1.50 or something in the primary. O'Shea was fairly close. Do you see any problems there for any
You know,
surprise?
I honestly can't remember the situation, but I would say that as primaries go, that's about as close as anybody's gotten away in that I can recall. I mean, I don't know for sure, but
Okay.
so
What
I mean,
about
and
3?
Bill's got a great name. It's it's an easy name. It's not alarming.
Irish. Irish names are good
It's
in
not
this city.
alarming to anybody. But at the same time, Wayne's been
Hard worker.
He's a hard worker, and he can really grind it out. He can grind it
He's
out with
my
the best of them.
counselor.
We'll develop this a little further. I want to do very quickly. Sia and Judge.
I would
Because I can't pronounce his last name.
Darren,
M.
great ward counselor.
And?
He's been. I got put on the council at the same time as him. Back in
That was
2000.
60-40, that race in the primary, right?
Yeah.
See any major changes there?
No, I don't. In Memateus, he ran for
before, right?
school committee and lost. He ran for councilor at large and lost. And I would say he's going to lose.
So
there,
you
too.
say he has the stigma of being not a winner.
I'm
that's
not
good.
saying that, but he has
All right, so
not. He has
basically
not
what you
had
were
much
saying, Paul.
success.
Now, let's get to Ward 2 quickly. And that's a pretty good race between Gina O'Toole and
Rick
Rick Starbard.
right? Yep.
That's going to be an interesting race.
Yep. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot closer than it was in the primary.
I do too. I think that this is not de facto.
Right, and these are two essentially newbies. Rick Starbard was on the school committee. He ran for councilor at large a couple of years ago and was not successful. Gina is new to the game. She's a school teacher. She's
Teacher aide.
teacher
And
aide,
she's
and her husband is a
tenacious.
police officer.
Yes, she
Yeah.
is.
And she's tenacious.
Yes, she's
So-
very smart.
And tough as nails.
Yes, she is.
So, Ward 5. You think she has
Diana
any problem up
Chakutis?
there?
I tend to think not.
Okay.
I mean, she's very active. She's, a lot of the seniors that come down to the senior center live in her ward, and everybody loves her. And
So this is all subject to possible change.
yeah,
right?
and I don't really even know this fella.
Hey.
He hasn't been around much. I haven't actually seen him engaged or anything like that, so I haven't had a chance to really evaluate him at all.
But he's out there doing the right thing.
Is he?
Yeah.
Like I said,
Anytime you
I
contest
don't know.
somebody doing the right thing, because it makes the person that's in office work a little harder, I think.
Sure.
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, I agree
So,
with that.
well, Paul, I don't think it's a very good idea that 4, 6, and 7 are non-contested. That's a bad indictment. And that's
yeah.
not to knock those counselors, because they're pretty decent guys. But everybody should go up against somebody.
Somebody.
Well, 6 said someone, and he took the papers out and didn't do anything.
That was a 4.
No, Ward 6, Peter Cabano.
6?
Yeah,
and did not go the
pulled
distance?
papers.
But
I
never
can't
put the signatures in.
He didn't
And
put the
that happens a lot. In Ward 4, we had that case where somebody put the signatures in, and apparently they were
signatures.
forging the signatures, and Bob
Allegedly.
Tucker.
Apparent, Paul. I mean,
Allegedly.
geez.
You saw the picture of it. It was
I
like
mean,
they.
please. Oh, by the way, the one who called him on it
Bob
happens to
Tucker.
be in Arizona as we speak.
Who, Tucker?
Yeah, he's there in Arizona. I don't know what he's doing out
That's
there.
why I haven't been getting any flack lately.
That's right. Yeah, he's been down there. Things to think about, folks, and we're going to get right to this because, this stuff is important, Lisa. I don't know whether you realize this or not, but unless food is mixed with saliva, you can't taste it.
Is that right?
No, I don't know. That's what they say. Think
Well,
about,
Who's that?
How do you know?
Who's that?
because I researched these things.
Is there any way that you can actually eat without generating saliva in your mouth?
I have no idea, Paul. I'm just telling you what the experts are telling me.
I tell you what, I'm like Pavlov's dog. I hear the bell ring and my mouth starts watering.
Well, if you flip up one of our vegetables, you'll see a nice tongue there salivating. And that brings me to part 2, which is human saliva. Listen to this one, guys. Contains a painkiller called...
Opioid.
Yeah, that is 6 times more powerful than morphine. Now, did either one of you know that?
No.
That makes 3 of us. I didn't know it either.
So if that was the case, why do we need morphine?
I have no idea, Paul. These are wonderful things. This is, you know what we call the segment? Things to think about, Paul.
All right.
Lisa, what do you think?
I think that's crap.
Can you think about those things?
But what does 6 times more powerful actually mean?
Yeah.
I mean, people walk on. So
And
if I just run a little saliva in my mouth, all of a sudden I get high as a kite.
Or like
No.
if I cut myself, I'll lick my arm and I'm fine. That doesn't make sense.
Do yourself a favor and research it. I'm just giving you the facts, ma'am. Just the
Where
facts,
do you
ma'am.
So
find
is this
this
one of those
stuff?
things where I found it on the internet, so it must be right?
Yeah, where are you getting this stuff from?
See, here they are. They're
Fake
questioning.
news. This fake news.
Yeah, there you
could
go,
be.
fake news.
But this is things to think about.
All right.
Because I don't believe the
During
next stuff.
pregnancy,
Yeah, I don't
Lisa,
believe
when
that.
you were pregnant, your brain got smaller. Did you know that? And
I
it
don't
took
believe
6
that.
months for your brain to come back to normal.
Listen, when I was
According-
pregnant, I was sharp as a. I was smarter than I am now.
What does a shrinking brain actually do for your thought process? Does it change your thought process? Does it make it harder to think or better, easier
You know,
to think?
Paulie, I'm not into neuroscience. I'm a geography teacher.
Did they say
So
how
it's
they
something to
found
think
that
about
out?
anyway.
Yeah, it is something to think about.
How did they find out it was shrinking? What did they do?
Measured it.
How?
You ask me.
Well, I know how they do it when they got to find dementia, and it's post-mortem. It's after
Which
they
puts
die.
me, I'm
That means they
moving
have to
on.
cut you open and do it.
I'm not, folks,
I want to know where you're
they're
getting
double
it.
teaming me
I
here.
want to know where you get this stuff from. That's what I'm asking. I want to see where you're getting it.
Must be from the Huffington
I'm
Post.
going one step further. Pedro, put up about sugar. Now, whether you realize this or not, by putting sugar on a cut or a wound, not only does it reduce the pain, but it speeds up the healing process.
Yeah, that I know.
Oh, so you agree with that one?
I don't
That's an
agree.
old wives' tale.
No, it's supposed to, they said if you take sugar, it's not like you're going to not feel anything, but they say if you
It
give
alleviates?
Soothes it. It probably absorbs
I
some of
think
the
it
sting.
takes the edge off.
I had to put, and this is my physician told me, I had to put vitamin B, you punch the tablet for the juice of the vitamin E, onto my scar to reduce scar tissue. Did you know that?
Yes, I do know that.
All right, so these things do work. Folks, they finally agree with me on one thing. They're not coming back on the show anymore, Lisa. You're all done. Loneliness. Will you buy this one? Loneliness weakens immunity.
Yes.
Having family and friends increases immunity by 60%.
Yes,
I agree with that 100%.
I agree with that one.
Thank you.
So
I do.
we
So that website, I agree with wherever you got that.
So we talk about this at GLIS all the time, where we're, a big part of how we get people engaged and thinking about what's in their own best interest from a health perspective is to be more social and be involved. That's why we really try very hard to get people that are shut-ins or won't come out of their house or what have you, get them down to the senior center or get them to go visit their sister or get them to go to this, and we even have vehicles to do it. We'll come and get you and take you there, and that's
So you
so
endorse
important.
this? You
Widows,
endorse
yeah,
this?
they have like for people that just lost someone, like
Yeah.
if you lost your wife or husband, they do like group therapy so that you have someone to connect to. So you're
That's
not lonely.
fascinating because a lot of times when people have been married for a long period of time, one dies and the other one dies thereafter,
Yes,
shortly
that was-
thereafter.
yeah. My girlfriend just lost her husband.
That's an interesting
Yeah,
phenomenon. Glad
she
you
does
found-
group therapy. Because
You're
she's
not just a
very
pretty
social.
face, huh?
I would.
Aw, he likes me.
Your brain's expanded quite a bit.
I'm telling you,
Yeah.
it's that one brain cell.
I would characterize that whole statement that you made about the loneliness and how, in some cases, you're better. Less loneliness is better for you. It's all about the power of positive thinking.
Yep.
And so if you always think positive about things, and you can't really think positive about things if you're by yourself and you're depressed, because the negative things will start coming and coming, and then they compound each other. So when you're thinking positively, all good things come of that.
They're teaching the kids now in school something called growth mindsets. And it's basically, you know how like if your kid says something negative and you go, if you think that way, it's going to happen. I've been telling my kid this all summer. If you think like that, it's going to happen. So all summer I've been saying, don't think like that. We're going to have a good year. He goes into school and they come home with this list of everything. I didn't know it was called that, but it's called growth mindsets. And that's how they're teaching kids now to be positive.
Wisdom. This is wisdom,
The
folks.
Shoemaker. It's a
This-
fabulous school.
You know, when people tune into the show, they learn a lot. I want you to know that, Lisa.
They're going to learn a lot more when I'm here.
He's the
Did you
professor.
know that temperature affects appetite?
Yes.
A cold person is likely to eat more food.
Yes.
I'm always cold.
You and me.
Once upon a time, so were you. You told me if you were 300.
Yeah. Well,
That's pretty
you never
big.
notice that when you eat something, you feel warmer? It's because of your stomach.
But I always feel cold. That's why I like to eat.
Well, you could be anemic.
Your left lung is smaller than your right lung.
Which one's my left?
Got left-handed. And the reason for that
Is it-
is because of the heart, the placement of the heart.
Did you know one side of your body is also small?
She knows anatomy too, Paul.
Right.
She challenged you on market rate, which she knew more than you did, by the way,
okay.
I hate to tell you. Am I right, folks? She challenged me on whatever. I don't know if we're going to do any more shows with her, Paul, because, you know, we'll be replaced. The smell, this makes me feel bad now. The smell of freshly cut grass is actually the scent of plants released when they're in distress. That means I'm torturing plants when I cut the grass?
Yes.
That's interesting.
I don't like
I
that.
had
That
never
makes
thought
me
about
feel
that, but
bad.
it makes so much sense, right?
Yeah,
They're
but
all
isn't
like-
that
so,
sad?
so if they
like
could
their
make
death
if they
cry.
could make noise, it would be a
Screaming.
cry.
They'd be
right?
screaming.
Right. right.
Like when you put lobsters in the boiling water and they scream.
I might not cut my grass anymore, isn't it, juice? Witty time for it. And we're going to go right to my home country, my former home country. You know, I'm an immigrant, in case you folks didn't understand that. Well, actually, I'm not an immigrant. My parents were. I'm bilingual. But in any case, in Italy, for 30 years, under the Borgias, they had warfare, they had terror, they had murder and bloodshed, but they produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Renaissance. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love. They had 500 years of democracy and peace. And what did they produce? The cuckoo clock. Orson Welles said that.
So that just goes to show you that
What's the next one,
if you don't
Polly?
go outside the box,
Polly,
you'll
you
never
gotta
get.
you got to do the next one because it's nice, right up your alley.
Criticism is prejudice made plausible by H.L. Mencken, and that is so
What
true.
do you think of that one?
Yeah.
Up your alley? Go on, Lisa.
Yeah.
You're next.
Yeah, that's right. All right, you want me to read the
You got to be
next one?
careful.
You got to be careful if you don't know where you're going because you might not get there.
That is so Yogi Berra.
Yeah, Yogi was the best. Paul?
So religion hinges upon faith. Politics hinges upon who can tell the most convincing lies or maybe just shout the loudest. But science hinges upon whether its conclusions resemble what actually happens.
That's
Which is
pretty accurate.
really pretty interesting, especially when the politicians run around screaming about how, you know, the science of the ecology and global warming is somehow
Yeah.
definitive.
Well, how about politicians telling convincing lies? The one who tells the greatest convincing lie is the winner.
Yeah, what did you used to say? What was it? I think Hitler said it or something. That no, it was Hitler's one of his henchmen talked about you make the lie as big as you
Oh,
can.
the biggest lie.
Yeah.
People love lies. Whoever tells the biggest lie is the winner. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Goebbels, that was under Hitler's, yeah. The only possible conclusion the social scientists can draw is some do and some don't.
That's the truth too.
Go on, Polly.
You know, I don't think it should be called social science because science does not give you the, you know, as soon as it's social, it can't be science, right?
Well, I don't know about that part. No, Christopher Hitchens, I'm sorry, pronounce it.
Hitchens.
He was an interesting cat.
Okay. What can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. There you
You're
go.
shaking your head, Lisa, huh? You
That's
like
right.
that one, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
So I guess brownie points for that?
Yeah, I believe you on that one.
What's the next one then, kiddo?
Men have become the tools of their own tools, Thoreau.
It's the truth too.
Yeah.
That was Thoreau.
That's not.
And
I like
folks don't realize he wrote this almost 150 years ago.
Smart guy on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Polly?
Democracy does not guarantee equality of conditions. It only guarantees equality of opportunity.
That's
And if somebody would just get that through the heads of the progressives, I would really love it.
I knew he'd love that, and you even like that, Lisa, too. You shook your head on that.
That's true.
That is absolutely what we got to pound into our kids today in the schools and in society.
Right. You know, you once said something to me, and I heard that you used to say it to the kids. You would talk to some of the kids, like maybe a Spanish kid or a black kid, somebody of color, and you would say, hey, look, you're starting out with one strike against you, so you got to work harder. You know, and I'm not saying that that's fair or anything like that, but it's so important that you really instill in somebody the need that they have to really push harder. That's all.
Well, we're going to put these up and read them
Instead
real
of-
quick because we have to wrap. We're on that wrap time, so put them up and we'll wrap it up shortly. We got a couple more to do, and What are they?
Moral indignation.
Only imbeciles never change their minds. I buy that. I love this one. Moral indignation is jealousy with a halo. That's a good one.
Yeah.
A goodly number, huh?
Progressives, they're morally
that's there.
indignant about everything.
A goodly number of scientists are not only narrow-minded and dull, but they're just plain stupid. And on that note, folks, we have to wrap it up because I feel just plain stupid around Lisa and Paul. Have yourself a great week. Send those letters in.